Hey friends, welcome back. Now let's dive into advanced DAX and apply what we have learned in the last video. So I'm going to show you an example where you use those table functions to create virtual tables and DAX. So in an expression, a measure to figure out how many new customers we have for each of the month. So let's actually first create a visualization here using our dates table and say I'd like to see my date. I can take this option. By default, I get the hierarchy as long as I have the auto date time enabled. So in case you do not see the hierarchy, then the reason for this would be if you go to File Options and Settings, and under Options here, you can specify at the beginning, let me take this, whether this auto time intelligence, this all the daytime is enabled or not. So if you have a lot of date columns in your model and a big model, then I would highly recommend that you turn this off. In our case, we have a small model, so we can leave it on. And the reason for leaving this on is that we get then this automatic hierarchy, which is created for us. If you untick this option, then you would have to create the hierarchy yourself. Just wanted to mention this. So for small models, that's only fine to leave this ticked. If you got bigger models, then I would recommend, especially if you have a lot of date columns, untick this option, because this saves a lot of space and the model size will be much smaller if you untick this. So let me cancel this and let's go back to our use case here. So here we got our month, and let me untick the day and also untick the quarter, because all we need here is actually the year and the month. And let me also increase the text size a little bit if I go to the value section here, so you see this better on your screens. So paste this here so you have it available. But of course, you can also download this on the results section. So the whole file will also be provided for you. And if you want to have a look at that. So now we get our date, and let's figure out how many customers we have. Well, the customers for each of the month is kind of easy. The two ways to do it, we could use a DAX expression for that, or we could simply use Power BI itself without any kind of calculation, which means that we use any kind of field. Let's say the customer ID. If I let me scroll to custom ID, if I can find it, it's in the oldest table, of course. So I need to search my customers. There's the ID. Of course, you could also use the search bar up there if you want. Now if I drag the customer ID also in my table in here, drag and drop, and I would see a lot of IDs here for the customer. However, I don't want to see the value here. I'd like to see actually a count of those. So you can go to the custom ID here, to the little drop down arrow here. If you take this, you can see that you can count here. And if I say I want to count distinct, if I take this option, then I will get here the numbers. So each of the customers which we had during each of the month. So for July 2020, for instance, we had 20 customers. In August, we had 18 customers, and so on. And 89, this is the total amount of customers you have in the data set. So distinct customers. Just in this case, distinct customer needs. So this would be one way to do it. The other way, as I said, just in case you're interested in that, use the distinct count function. So if you right click on the oldest table and say, I'd like to put in the measure. And you go into this measure here and say, this will be our say unique customers, customers is equal to, and use distinct counts. So there it is. Counts the number of distinct values in a column. So you can use this, and then you need to refer to a column name in a search for a customer ID to get exactly the same result. You can take this option here and you close the parentheses and you're good to go. So simply count without duplicates distinct count of customer IDs. And if you evaluate this measure, you can take the option here. Now it's available for you. And if you search for unique customers, there is, I can take my table, and then I can also take this option to edit, and you'll see that you got exactly the same values here and here. So it's up to you how to do it. If you need the measure for several visuals, I would calculate it on my own. So I would do the distinct count here. If I only needed for 1 or 2 visuals, you could also do like that. That gives me let Power BI do here a aggregation for you, specific aggregation you need. So count distinct, or maybe sometimes in the use case also count. Okay. So these are the unique customers for each of the month's levels. But I would like to figure out what are actually our new customers. Now I know for a fact that new customers is or depends on how you define it. But let's say we define new customers as customers which have not ordered the last 30 days. Okay. So if a customer has ordered within the last 60 days, but not in the last 30 days, and then he'll be ordered, he or she reordered. Then in the next month, we would consider him or her as a new customer. You can extend this of course, but in this example, we use 30 days. Now let's actually create this measure. Let's right-click on the orders table to make sure that we create the measure within the orders table, then actually go new measure here. And there it is. And let me actually make this bigger and say these are our new customers. Okay. Let's call this new customers is equal to. Let me go to line and press Shift Enter. And now let's define variables. And here we use the concept, which I mentioned in the last video, which is virtual tables. So our new customers, so this measure, it is a measure. So it will return a value. So a single value, not a table, but we will use tables in order to evaluate what we want to return. We do this using variables because it's cleaner for code. And sometimes it also saves, better for performance because we only evaluated once. We say we create a variable, which are our current customers. And this variable is equal to, and we refer to the values. Remember what it does. The values function returns here a unique list of whatever we give it. We use the custom ID. So customer ID, there it is. And we store it in the current customers. So this is our first virtual table. So values returns a table of a unique list of custom IDs and we store it in the variable between name, current customers. And let me press Shift Enter and go to new line and define another variable. Let's say my second variable are my, let's say, customers. And let's say, well, let's call this maybe no customer last 30 days. Okay. That's 30D. And as I often say, in my courses, feel free to come up with better names if you want. Right? Or maybe you have a certain specific syntax you use, then please do that. And there's something actually I miss here, which I personally always use or try to always use a simple dash in front of my variables, which I define simply something which I like to do. You don't have to do it. Oftentimes you can see this. So and here I use another functional expression for creating tables. And I like to use something which we have not used so far, which is the calculate table function. So calculate table is also kind of similar to calculate, but calculate table evaluates tables in a modified context. Calculate on the other hand, evaluates expressions in a modified context. So calculate table here also creates a new table for us, which will be a virtual table. Because the table itself also same as the custom ID, the uniqueness here. So both of these tables are only available within the customer. So within these expression, they are not available for any other kind of expression. And they're also not visible here in the field list, right? They only exist here virtually when this measure is evaluated. So calculate table. And what we want to do is we want to use also the values function. So let's go with values. Values here. It's a unique list of our customer ID. So this will return, of course, exactly the same as we have in the current customer. So above, however, we can use here a modified context. In this context, we use the filter function. So filter allows us to create a table, which is filtered by the filter expression. So we say we want to use the complete dates table. That is why use all function. So all allows us to remove any kind of filters, which may come from the visual. And here we have filters for the date, because as you see here, for each row entry here in a visual, we have a filter context, which is a specific date, like September 2019. So a month and a year level. This is the filter context. And we want to get rid of this context. And that's why we make sure that when we evaluate this unique list of customer IDs, we first remove any kind of filters, which might have been applied using the all function. Then the filter itself is on the dates table. So on our dates table. And then we can here modify the filter context. So we would like to make sure that the dates TBL date, so the specific date itself, the continuous date range should be greater than the minimum of the dates table date. Here we go. This one. And that the same, let me close this here, -30, or should be greater than -30. Yes. And the double ampersand to create a second condition, we make sure that the date itself. From the dates table here, this one is less than the minimum of the dates table date. Here it is. This one. Then we can close this. Then we can close the filter function. And finally, we can close the calculate table function. So there's a large measure here. Well, let's see whether we can form this a little bit, maybe like that filter all. And then here we also go on the new line. And it looks like that. Maybe like that. Okay. So let's go and play around with this and figure out whether you get a better formatting option or use also, formatings or tax formatins, formatters which are available on the internet for free if you want to do that. But let's figure out what we actually do here just to explain this. So we create also a unique list of customer IDs. This here is exactly the same expression as above. But then we say we want to modify this. Instead of using all the customer IDs, we want to modify this table. That's why we wrap it in the calculate table, because this allows us to evaluate this table. But then filter it, and we do it by the second expression here. So we want to filter on the dates table, and then we make sure that first we remove any kind of filters. Well, this returns the complete dates table, but then we shrink this complete date table down by using this second expression here. So this means that we would like to see all the dates, but only dates which are greater than the minimum of the date -30. And at the same time, are less than the minimum of the date. This is now referring to what we have in the view. So the minimum of the date here, this one is for each row, the year, and the month level. So the minimum here would be July 2019, here August 2019, here September 2019, and so on. And we say -30 because what this minimum refers to actually is not only, as I come here, May 2020, this minimum is actually referring to the 1st of May 2020, because if you would evaluate here the maximum, then if you go down one more level to the day level, then this would be the 30th of May. So maximum would be the end of the month, minimum is the 1st of the month. Okay, as you can see here. And we make sure that it should be the date table itself should be greater than the minimum. So as an example here, the 1st of May -30 days. So we are on the somewhere on the 1st of April then for this one. And at the same time, it should be less than the minimum, so less than the 1st of May. So that's why we always get for each month, you can think of it like for each month to get the last 30 days. This is what this evaluates to from the dates table. We only want to see here unique list of custom IDs, which appearing in this period here. And this is allows us to shrink down the list of unique custom IDs based on this criteria. So these are the two virtual tables we create. And then always remember, if you create variables, you need to use the return keyword. So let me actually go to a line here and say I'd like to return. And what I like to return here is simply the count rows. So please count the rows. So count rows allows us to count the rows in the number of rows in a table. Now we have two tables here, but what we need is the intersection of those tables. So what we do is we say, or actually what we want like to have actually the values which are not appearing, which are let's say, which are in this first table. So all the customers, but which are not appearing in the second table. So we can use another function, which is the except function. Here returns the rows of left side table, which do not appear in the right side table. Right. So like that, and the left table is the first table which we created. So this current customers and the right table is the second table we created. So there's no customer last 30 days. And actually, maybe this name is a little bit misleading because actually these are the customers, which the whole value is the new customers, but these are the customers which have been ordered in the last 30 days. Remember, because we use calculate table and we want to see all the customer ideas in this modified expression. So all the customers which appear in the last 30 days. So I'm sorry for that. And let's actually, to avoid any confusion here, change this name. So these are the customers, not the no customers. These are the customers last 30 days and also remove this one here. And we should be good to go if we select this one and remove then this one. Okay, here we go. So this should now give us a result. And I think the name here is much better. So sorry for the confusion here, but these basically evaluate only the customer ideas, which are in the last 30 days, considering the current row we are in. Okay. So that's it. And then with the except, we simply say, please return all the customer ideas, but not those which appear in the last 30 days. That's what you'll hear with the except function. And then we simply count the rows of this new table because the except also returns a table. Okay. So we have a lot of table functions here. Well, that's why I think the last video was kind of interesting and good, but use the values here. We use the calculate table in order to modify a table based on the values. Function, we use filters also a table function because you see that we use the date table and we filter this date table down by the second expression. We give it here, right as a second argument. And then we use the except function, which also returns a table. Simply it's kind of a left anti-join, right? So all the values which are in this table, but not appearing in this table. And then we simply count those values because what we create here at the end of the day is a measure and a measure cannot return a table. But the count rows then simply counts the numbers which appearing in this table. And the number itself is a value and the value can be returned by a measure. So kind of complex, but I said it's an advanced DAX here video and with a lot of table functions. And also virtual table functions. So let's actually evaluate this now. Let's press enter to evaluate and let's see what we get and the measure itself. So here we go, new customers. And now if we add this to the visual itself, we should see a different number here. So if you take this new customer option here, we see that now at the beginning, of course, these are exactly the same, but then you will see differences here. As an example, hey, here in August, we had 18 customers in total. That is true. However, if we take a look at how many customers actually have been in August, but have not been in July, so in the prior month, then we can see 14. So here we got 14 new customers, which have not ordered in the prior month. So obviously for customers ordered in August, but they also ordered in July. That's how you can interpret this. And same is true then for all the other values in here, right? And I said this new customer here, this of course, it depends on the business and on your personal logic. Maybe you say 30 days is not what I consider new customers. Maybe it's 180 days, maybe it's 90 days, whatever. Right? So it's up to you. But the main key point here is really using those table functions in various contexts. Here. And that's what we did. Hopefully understood what we did. Please take a closer look at the formula, try it out yourself. And as always, thanks a lot for watching. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys. Best guys. Best guys.